Welcome back to Free Media. I'm Amber Duke.
And I'm Robby Soave. Well, the Trump administration announced a sudden freeze on nearly all federal grants and loans, causing significant confusion among government entities, Congress, state programs, and also nonprofits that are dependent on this funding.
The Office of Management and Budget issued a brief but somewhat unclear memo instructing all federal agencies to temporarily halt activities associated with the obligation or disbursement of federal financial assistance.
As an example of the initial confusion, CBS News reporter Catherine Watson tweeted this statement from Meals on Wheels. If, in fact, this order includes the Older Americans Act, this would presumably halt service to millions of vulnerable seniors who have no other means of purchasing or preparing meals, and the lack of clarity and uncertainty right now is creating chaos for local Meals on Wheels providers, not knowing for sure whether they should be serving meals today. Let's check in how CNN is covering this move from Trump.
This is so wide-ranging and so large-scale that I think a lot of people last night, including some career officials in the OMB, were trying to figure out exactly what they were going for. Yeah. And the reason why is this. The actual two-page memo that was put out and signed by the acting director wasn't exactly clear on the scope of what this order is going to do. Here's what we know at this point in time from talking to probably more than a dozen people over the course of the last 12 hours. Yeah. All loans and grants from the federal government, federal assistance, will be paused. We're talking about rental assistance, school breakfast and lunch programs, Head Start, federal grants for water infrastructure. What is not included in this is Social Security payments, Medicare payments, and according to the memo, any payments to individuals. They don't really define that much further, but the reality right now is there are lawmakers and constitutional lawyers who are saying you shouldn't be able to do this. This should be illegal. This isn't under your authority. And the administration very clearly moving forward with this review.
Be still my beating heart. Is this the moment?
Is this when you become a Trump supporter?
I guess, because, Ron Swanson in Parks and Rec talks about like his deeper ideas, and one of them is just bring all this crashing down. This might be it. This might be that happening. No, look, I will give some credit to the scared mainstream people that the order was a little bit unclear when I read it over. While I want significant cuts to government funding, and I don't want to be someone who goes, well, you're not cutting government funding in the right way. And it's like, well, nothing can ever be done the right way, so we just have to take what we can live with. Look, I understand if a group like Meals on Wheels is expecting a certain amount of its budget to come from government funding, if that is suddenly and without any warning or without any process canceled, maybe I can see why they are unhappy about that, and that applies to a lot of other things. But the importance of going through these grants and making sure that they are going to things that Congress has actually approved them for, and things that are consistent with both actual law about non-discrimination or not using affirmative action, consistent with the new executive order on DEI, which really just says explicitly what was already under the laws. You can't do preferential hiring and grant making and admissions and all of that kind of thing. The Supreme Court has said this over and over again. Various legislatures have said this over and over again. There is a real need to do that, for certain.
Definitely, and I think the White House press secretary did a decent job clarifying this issue from the podium on Tuesday. I mean, she talked about how this would have exceptions for grants that are made to individuals, meaning things like SNAP assistance, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. All of these things that go directly to an American are not going to be impeded by this executive order. So presumably Meals on Wheels would be included in those exemptions because it is direct assistance to individuals. It's more of grant-making programs that go to organizations, which then use the money as they see fit. So one of the big problems with the federal grant process is that Congress writes a sort of intentionally vague law where they give, let's say, $20 million to an agency, which then, or a department, and just they determine where exactly that money goes. And the Trump administration is saying, well, since the agency or the department gets some say over where the money actually goes once it's given the grant, then that's the power of the executive at that point. Congress has appropriated the money, but they haven't said specifically to which programs it's supposed to go to. So if the Department of Education gets a grant to fund lesbian art school programs or marginalized art school programs, we can decide if that goes to the lesbians in glasses or if it goes to the gay guys making films, right? Like they have some say-so over where that money actually goes. I'm using an extreme example for comedic sake,
there
but
was some I'm sure some right-wing news site has dug up some grant.
Probably.
Along those lines.
Well, they announced today that they found, this is on the foreign aid question, because they also paused all foreign aid pending a review under Secretary of State Marco Rubio, which is also fantastic.
That I am all for.
They found
without
out
qualification.
they were giving tens of millions of dollars. I think it was $50 million for a program to provide condoms to Gaza. Like, and that's dead now. Great.
And that money could have been spent on Ukraine.
to think.
No, pausing foreign aid is something I support without reservations. The American people could not be clearer in their desire to spend, if we're going to spend American tax dollars, spend them at home, if they're going to be spent at all, rather than just return to the people or less in taxes taken in. The American people want foreign aid absolutely cut, and it never happens. This is all a symptom, though, I think, and you're kind of getting at this, at Congress doing its job very badly.
Exactly.
We don't want to live in a world where, because if you're a conservative, the Republican's not going to win every time. If you're a Democrat, the Democrat's not going to win every time. If you're a Libertarian, the Libertarian's never going to win. So where you need to bring in a chief executive who shares your view and then have them do all these orders. Now, a lot of the orders Trump is doing are countermanding Biden orders that I disagreed with, so that's fine and understandable, but ideally this needs to be codified into law by the Congress to say you don't spend grant money, don't spend federal dollars on this, and that. Now, with Republican control of Congress, that's something that just should so clearly needs to happen, so that you're not relying on just the powerful executive decreeing it. This is what Congress is supposed to be doing, and they just don't want to do their job.
And they do it intentionally because they don't want political responsibility for the
Correct.
programs that these dollars actually end up going to. They can say, well, I didn't vote for that. I voted for this large block grant, and it was the executive that decided to send it to X, Y, and Z. So it sort of gives them a little bit of plausible deniability so that they're not actually held accountable for the things that they're funding.
I saw on social media a lot of hiring and admissions people in higher education and universities saying that because of the DEI executive order, now we won't be able to do hiring. Now we won't be able to fill. We're trying to find people who check XYZ box related to race, gender, and something else, and now we can't do that anymore. And I'm like, yeah, well, right. Thumbs up, A. B. That was already illegal under existing federal law.
Right.
So the fact that you're admitting this is going to make it harder for you to do something you shouldn't have been doing anyway suggests to me that scrutinizing grants, specifically along the DEI hiring axis, will be a fruitful enterprise for maybe for right-leaning journalists or libertarian journalists as well.
I'm also not convinced of the underlying panic coming from some of these organizations that the money's suddenly gone. I mean, yes, they've paused future disbursements, but these things are usually given out on a quarterly basis or an annual basis. The idea that the funding is suddenly gone when they've already been distributed probably tens of millions of dollars, to me seems like they're intentionally doing that for political purposes because they don't want any of the money to run dry in the future. So they're creating this faux panic of, well, we're not going to be able to feed people tomorrow. That's obviously not the case.
And while this is a little bit a field of what this order is actually intended to do, even when people try to manipulate you about food stamps, for example, yes, there are I want to cut government spending, but my area to concentrate or start with is not, ripping away welfare for people who are truly desperate and truly needy. I think it should be a stepping stone to them getting back on their feet and finding jobs and being able to support themselves. There are some people who just can't do that. We can talk about the best strategies for making them still be able to live fulfilling, productive lives. But some of the people who use food stamps are just college kids who technically qualify for it and use it for beer money. We all know that takes place. We all know that happens. We all know people from our college experiences who live like that. So let's not pretend there isn't any waste, fraud, and abuse to root out there too.
Fair.
More free media tomorrow. Thanks so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. We always appreciate it, and we'll have more content in a bit. Bye-bye.